Good late morning, early afternoon. I'm Asia Mohammed Castañeda. I am a Vital Lands Network Architect. And if you are curious about Vital Lands, what we do, but I'm sure you guys are all know everything about it. But if you don't, here's a link to our website and more information on the Vital sessions, and that's where you'll find the archive. So if you do want to share this session or previous session, this is where we archive all Vital sessions. So we're really excited. Thank you all for coming. We know that this is a crazy time, so we appreciate your presence. And I really want to thank the presenters because this is all like volunteer that they want to share this information with you. So we're really happy to provide a space and a network for that space for learning. So the session today is NARP, and you'll learn all about what that is. 101, understanding the basics for inclusive watershed engagement and planning. And we have here today a crew from the Sierra Club, presenters Mila, Cindy, and Emily from the Sierra Club's Clean Water team. Thank you guys so much for coming. Please use the chat for questions and anything else you guys might need. Thank you all.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mila Marshall. I am a new staff member of the Sierra Club and very happy to be here. We are recording this session, so you will be able to view this after we finish. And we also will be uploading our presentation so that you may use it and share it widely. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Thank you, Asia and Todd, for those kind introductions. And our talk today is NARP 101, Understanding the Basics for Inclusive Watershed Engagement and Planning. Oh, and also thank you for everybody who took the questionnaire beforehand. It was really useful for us to understand who was interested, who was attending, what your familiarity with NARPs was, and what were some of your expectations of us today. So thank you for doing that. So a little bit about who we are. My name's Mila. I'm the Clean Water Advocate. Cindy, many of you already may know. She is a wonderful leader, and I'm very happy to be working with her. And Emily, who is our water team conservation organizer. And essentially, as the Clean Water team, there are more of us, a couple more, but we harness grassroots power to ensure that there are plans for watershed improvements developed with significant public input and implemented in a timely fashion. So we hope that our work will contribute to the health and quality of all Illinois waterways now and in the future. So very happy to be a part of this network. And this is who we are. And these are some great photos, I must say. Before we get into NARPs, I am a storyteller, and I really enjoy kind of helping us begin with getting on the same page. So I love this quote, the basic quality that any great story must have is a story that illustrates the human condition. So I hope you'll find that true of this story. And this story is about the outcasts and the forest fire. So once upon a time, there were two outcasts from a village. One was blind and one had no legs, and they didn't necessarily like each other either. So they are on the outskirts of the village, and the blind man says to the legless man, "Hey, I smell smoke, there must be a fire." But of course, the blind man can't see his way out. So he's kind of stuck. And the legless man looks at him and says, "Well, I don't see anything and I don't smell anything, you're crazy, leave me alone." And maybe about an hour or two later, the man with no legs looks around and he smells the smoke and he sees where the fire is coming from. And he sort of panics and sees a way out, but then he looks down, he has no legs. There's no way that he can make it out in time. Now, these two outcasts have a couple of choices. They can stay there and surely perish, kind of hoping that the fire changes directions or the winds will shift the fires. They can wait for help and someone to help them independently. Or they can figure out a way to work together to escape to safety. So what do you think they did? The story does not end badly. They decided to work together, and the blind man placed the man with no legs on his back And the man with no legs was able to use his sight to direct and guide the blind man out of the forest fire and out of harm's way. And really, that's what we're all trying to do. We all have these limitations and barriers and capacities, but we're all experiencing a very similar threat. And it's really important for us to understand, how do we use our strengths so that we can move together and move forward into a safe future for all. So with that, we want to say thank you to everyone who is in attendance. We have some land conservation folks, wastewater people who have been engaged in the past. We have people who are regenerative ag folks. So Alliance for the Great Lakes, thank you. Illinois Extension, thank you. McHenry County, we appreciate you. Heartlands Conservancy. You know, and others that are on the slide, and also logos that are not here. We deeply appreciate your desire to learn about NARPs and how to work strategically within your watershed. And we hope that this presentation will be another kind of anchor for you in your work. So a little bit about how this will go this morning. Just a very brief refresher on how excess nutrients impact waterways. We'll also be going over the NARP plan, Nutrient Assessment and Reduction Plan, but NARP for short. We'll be going over NARP requirements, a little bit about working with other stakeholders on NARPs, and next steps in terms of working with the Sierra Club Clean Water Team and the extended network. And here's a lovely photo of some algae. One of the reasons why we're here to help these waters not look like this. So impacts of excess nutrients. Many of you are already familiar with some of the reasons why we're concerned with nutrients in our freshwater systems. Eutrophication comes from many different sources: agricultural runoff, wastewater discharges, and urban runoff, combined sewer overflows. And yes, nutrients are good for water systems. However, too much of a good thing is not necessarily a good thing. And our agricultural practices and runoff that comes from the state of Illinois contributes to hypoxic zones in the Gulf. So I want to say the cost is about $82 million a year in damages to that region, whether that's through tourism or through the seafood industry. So what we're doing here in Illinois is seeking to reduce our nutrient runoff to help reduce the negative impacts of excess nutrients going into the Gulf of Mexico. So I like to think of this as an opportunity to act local but think global, and our work here impacts everyone downstream. So just to kind of orient us to, yes, the state of Illinois currently has these issues. On the left, you'll see an article. And I must say, any article or resources are also linked in the notes section of our PowerPoint presentation. So when you access this and download it, all of the links to everything that you see will be available for you to access later. So in 2016, there were issues with Fox River's water due to algae growth. And that was one article. And then fast forward to 2018, IEPA and IDPH, Illinois Department of Public Health, had confirmed algal blooms on portions of the Illinois River. So, 2, 3, 4 years ago, this is something that that was, it was very clear that this was an issue in our state. Now, in 2019, another report was released citing canine deaths in order to raise awareness of algal blooms in Illinois lakes, rivers, streams, and ponds. 2020, this year, to the right, an article was released that there were more toxic algal blooms found on the Illinois River next to Starved Rock. And most recently, June of this year, there was another article citing the death of pets due to algal blooms along Illinois rivers and the Illinois River in other states. So I thought this was really interesting because here we have an opportunity to connect nutrients and excess nutrients in water bodies to another non-traditional group of stakeholders, which are pet owners. right? So if we think about how is it that we build these diverse networks, how is it that we get the word out, who are the people that we need to be engaging, how is it that we connect these stories to people who are deeply impacted and bring them into the conversation. So it was a moment, kind of an aha moment of how do we talk to pet owners, veterinarians, and professional organizations to get them on board as we recreate with our animals outdoors, because being a pet parent is, you know, you're a special kind of parent. So it takes all of us to work together, but we have to understand how to communicate and translate so we can build those diverse networks. Oh, sorry. So a little bit of NARP history, and I am going to tag my teammate Cindy to come in and share with you a little bit about that. Cindy?
Thanks, Mila. So the NARP requirement is a new one, and it's a result of the collaboration that was formed during the development of the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy. So I'm just going to give you a quick background on the strategy. Next slide, Mila. So in 2013, the Illinois EPA and Department of Ag brought many stakeholders together to develop this strategy. And the 2015 strategy has two main goals: to improve the quality of Illinois' rivers, lakes, and streams, and as you heard Mila say, to reduce the amount of nutrients that leave the state and travel down the Mississippi River and contribute to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. The strategy, as we developed it, has interim milestones that call for reducing phosphorus in our waterways by 25% by 2025, and nitrates by 15%. And 2025 is just 5 years away. Next slide, Mila. So one of the first things that was done when we were developing this strategy was that U of I scientists got together and developed a science assessment. And it shows that our waterways here in Illinois, our nutrient problem belongs to all of us. Roughly half of the phosphorus in our waterways comes from agricultural runoff, but the rest comes from people in our wastewater and runoff from urban areas. For nitrate, ag runoff represents 80% of the source, while wastewater is 18%. And you can see that urban runoff is a small slice of the pie when we look at the statewide level, but it can be significantly more in urban watersheds, even composing all of the nutrient inputs in very developed watersheds. So we've got to pay attention to all these sources if we're going to improve the quality in waterways throughout the state. Next slide. So because a diverse group of stakeholders work to develop the state strategy, those stakeholders have remained engaged in implementing the strategy. And there's a number of active working committees that involve the agricultural, wastewater, drinking water, and urban stormwater sectors, as well as many other partners. And so every 2 years, progress on the strategy is reported in a biannual report. And as Mila said, we've got links in this presentation notes that will take you to the strategy webpage, where there's information on the committee meetings, notes, and all the reports that I'm showing here. And what I've heard from others who work on nutrients in other states is that, what's striking about Illinois is that we have all these partners at the table, and they continue to work together. And our state's nutrient problems are large and widespread, so they're not going to be solved quickly. But we definitely need all stakeholders working together to solve them. And most of that work will be done at the watershed scale. Next slide. So new in the 2019 report are requirements that have been placed on major wastewater facilities. Those are facilities that treat 1 million gallons per day or more. And the Illinois EPA, the Illinois Association of Wastewater Agencies, and environmental groups work together to develop this agreement that will cut phosphorus from wastewater facilities to lower levels than were envisioned 4 years ago in the original strategy. This agreement will also accelerate the cleanup of nutrient problems within the state. Already statewide, wastewater facilities have reduced their phosphorus by 24% and nitrogen by 10%. So they're well on their way to meeting their portion of achieving our 2025 milestone. But those facilities will also further cut their phosphorus discharges as they're now being required to reduce those to 0.5 milligrams per liter by 2030. And in addition, some facilities will be required to lead the development of a NARP if they discharge upstream of a waterway that Illinois EPA has determined is suffering from too many nutrients. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mila to dig deeper into the NARP requirements.
Thank you, Cindy. All right, so this is the guidance that was provided by Illinois EPA. The most important part about this is that these plans must be supported by data and sound scientific rationale, and they must cooperate with and work with other stakeholders in the watershed, as well as other requirements. But those highlighted are the ones that we're really interested in here today, with learning how to work with multiple stakeholders, diverse stakeholders across the state, and using resources and tools that are available through the network to do so. So there are other aspects of the requirements, such as schedules for implementation, as well as provisions for water quality trading, which I was really interested in. And there are some links in the notes that will give you more information on water quality trading. And I believe there's a webinar or a meeting that is connected to that link if you're interested. So when are NARPs required? They're required when a facility is located upstream of a water body, or a stream segment has been determined to have a phosphorus-related impairment, or when it is determined that a water body is at risk of eutrophication due to phosphorus levels in the water body. And there are other more specific totally lost the word I was going to say. But there are other details for NARP requirements that are a bit technical that you can access from the link that's included in the notes. So this is a mapping tool that you can find online. I believe this is through IEPA. And I really enjoy GIS, Geographical Information Systems. If you are unfamiliar with it, it is a very powerful tool. You can access the map through the link on the slide or in the notes. So what you can do with this is view, manage, and analyze all Illinois NARP locations. I am unsure if it is as like how frequently it is updated. I want to say Cindy said that these were maybe from 20, I'm not quite sure, but you have to check to see, how recent the data is that is given by IEPA. But you also can use this map to help identify where to concentrate your efforts, as well as to understand the communities impacted and who possibly to work with in your watershed. So Cindy, I know you wanted to say some more about this map and this tool.
Yeah, thanks, Mila. And the map that Mila showed on the prior slide was one that Sierra Club put together when we only had a list of facilities from IEPA. So we're really thankful that they've now put together this handy web tool. And Emily's put the link in the chat so you can take a look at it. Just kind of some quick things about, I'm just going to go briefly over the legend that the red tags and yellow diamonds are facilities that have received a requirement to develop a NARP. The blue tags are facilities, wastewater facilities, where IEPA has determined that they do not need to prepare a NARP. The orange dots are where IEPA has not yet made a determination. So they are they are making this NARP determination as a facilities permits come up for renewal. So you want to definitely keep coming back to see the latest information at this site. And we took this screenshot of the tool to show you northeastern Illinois, and you can see that there's a number of facilities who are shaded there. In that part of the state, many watershed groups have already formed where wastewater facilities and others are already working together to improve their rivers, and they formed in advance of the NARP requirement. So the shading shows where there's multi-stakeholder groups formed. And now with this new NARP requirements on facilities throughout the state, we'll be seeing more groups forming. For example, if you look here up in Rockford, that's the center of a new Rock River watershed group that has just formed. So this mapping tool will help you see which facilities will be developing NARP plans in watersheds where you work. And it's also a useful tool to figure out other wastewater facilities that have received the NARP requirement nearby so that facilities can be working together. And then especially as NARPs are being developed outside of the Chicago metropolitan area, rural landowners and farmers need to be at the table in developing these NARPs, along with the wastewater reps who are leading the effort and people from the towns in those watersheds. So I'm now going to turn things over to Emily, who's going to say a bit more about stakeholder engagement.
Thanks so much, Cindy. Hi, everyone. So now we're going to be talking a little bit more about engaging with stakeholders. You can advance the slide. So in Illinois, so many have worked to cultivate these multi-stakeholder watershed groups that we see today. And you know, what this means is there's such a value, like Cindy was noting, and importance in having both community members and wastewater facilities working together to reduce nutrient pollution. And specifically, like we as the Sierra Club and so many other groups, especially wastewater facilities, have come together with many other organizations, you know, working with groups like the Sierra Club and the Conservation Foundation to collaborate with facilities. And I really want to emphasize that like wastewater facilities have played the biggest role in putting these watershed multi-stakeholder groups together. And it's so important to have, you know, so many examples that you can see on these slides of, these are all tenets of the collaboration that's currently happening and how important that is. You can advance the slide. Thank you so much. So it is so important that you are reaching out to facilities. So now we're going to be talking about like, how do you do that? How do you engage with your community? And we can see from even though just the people who have signed up on this call, you're from some of the groups that are listed in the usual suspects category. And you're all amongst some of the most important stakeholders that we have here. And we are actively in the process of encouraging wastewater facilities to engage with you. And we also want you to feel really emboldened to do the same, you know, especially in Illinois, like outside the metropolitan area, towns are in watersheds with lots of agricultural land. And it's so important for watershed work to engage with the agricultural community. You know, for example, this map that you see here shows which soil and water conservation districts have adopted the new STAR program, which works with farm owners to reduce runoff from their agricultural land. Thank you, Cindy, for putting that in the chat. So if you'll see, there are some usual suspects, but I want to encourage people to think outside the box, like going back to some of the earlier articles that we saw in the presentation that talked about dog deaths. You kind of use that for context and think of who else could be at the table, who else should be at the table. And to one of the suggestions, like a way to think outside the box is maybe bringing in the like Midwest veterinarians, because this isn't really, water is life and it impacts so many things. It really connects everyone together. So thinking about the different ways we can reach out to groups we, you know, may not otherwise would have thought is really valuable and important. So I would like everyone early, in the morning to um, put into the chat if you can think of any other groups that are outside the box. I want to challenge you to like get a little creative and like come up with your own ideas of different groups you think can be at the table. And if you can think of any, just sound off in the chat. I'm seeing Sarah put in water treatment plants. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Todd, for putting the question in the chat. Virginia saying paddling outfitters. I don't entirely know what that is, but that sounds awesome. Thank you for putting it in the chat. Feel free to, if anyone else by a raise of hands doesn't know what that is, feel free to explain a little more, Virginia. Deanna says forest preserve districts and park districts. Sarah says agricultural vendors. Yeah, thank you for these suggestions. Anyone else have any ideas? But yeah, it's a continued process. Tri communities from Mila, park districts from Stephen. Yeah, it's a continued process of trying to keep asking, how can we bring more and more people to the table? Sarah says HOAs. Christine says municipalities that have stormwater, retain and detainment ponds. Mila says triathlons. Gary says private landowners. Thank you all. So active. Okay, yeah, I'm seeing a couple more. Agricultural retailers, landscapers, indigenous environmental network. I love how active everyone is. Thank you so much for doing this. But yeah, this is a process, like continuing to ask ourselves this question throughout the span of our work is something that's really important. Like keep moving over, keep bringing more people to the table. Thanks so much everyone for your suggestions and ideas. It's awesome. We can advance the slide. Oh, Cindy says universities. That's a good one too. These are all great. So now we're going to talk a little bit about sharing experiences with each other and, really like how to engage with your local watershed. So at the Sierra Club, we have existing watershed groups, and we work in local watershed teams to implement the existing watershed plans and engage in the development of new nutrient assessment and reduction plans. Our team's core values are include like transparency for all residents within a watershed, meaningful implementation of NARPs, and also reasonable pacing and timeliness of like NARPs being implemented. We meet virtually monthly on the fourth Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. We will be sending out an invite for everyone who RSVP'd to this following the call, so just keep your eyes on your inboxes if you'd like to join us. But it's a really collaborative space where we report on our efforts and our wins in our watersheds. We share actions that we can take together. We check in on what resources people need to feel really supported in the work that they're engaging in, and so much more. This is a photo from one of our most recent calls that we had where I got everyone to smile and wave. Because unfortunately, can't meet up in person right now, but we try and do everything we can to like still, feel a sense of community within this group, because we really are all connected. We're all downstream of somewhere, and I feel like that's the biggest takeaway. So if we advance the slide. So next, I kind of just want to start to open the floor. We're going to come off of the presentation screen, and I'll put these questions in the chat, but I'd love to start to sort of open things up, and so we can hear more from each other about if you're currently engaging in NARP development, if you need help engaging, what needs to be done differently in your eyes to build a diverse and inclusive NARP network. So feel free to come off presentation mode. I'll put these questions in the chat and we'll go from there.
And feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Questions, responses to the questions.
Yeah, questions aren't limited to these. If you have questions for us, feel free to ask. Or if you have other thoughts, feel free to offer them up.
I just shared, Steve from Rockford, I just shared something with Cindy. Um, One facility on the Rock River that's not connected, that doesn't have a plan yet, a NARP, is the Dixon Correctional Center. I talked to a guy there a couple times. Last night, actually, on a generic form on their website, I just wrote a note to the warden telling her about the recent formation of the Rock River watershed group and how everybody's going to be in it, from South Beloit. Moline is not in it yet, but everybody down to Sterling is, except the Dixon Correctional Center. And Moline's jumping on board probably after their first meeting. Anyway, what will become of it, we don't know, but it's an interesting story. Anybody that hasn't met me before, I'm a new to this, but I jumped on with Cindy's instruction to the Rock River Watershed Group and was warmly welcomed. And they 2 weeks ago they approved their bylaws, so hopefully they're gonna let me keep sitting at the table. I don't get to be a vote, so to speak, but I think I can be a voice at the table. So go get them.
Kudos to your group for being able to reach across the state line.
Thanks, Steve, for jumping in.
I see Olga has her hand up. You have something to say?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for putting this presentation together. My name is Olga Bautista. I work in the southeast side of Chicago on different environmental justice issues along the Calumet River. And I wanted to, so one thing that we experience in the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years is that we get kind of like pitted against like environment against labor, against work, like jobs, like what do we have to like make a choice? Like, do we want jobs or do we want clean air and clean water? Oh my God, I apologize for my COVID hair that I woke up like this. So I see on Sierra Club's website, like they have some areas listed here where like Macomb, Pekin, Streeter, Monmouth, and other areas that are emerging NARPs. And I'm just wondering about, these are also areas in my previous life. I used to work for the migrant education program, and these are some of the areas that I used to hit up where there was a lot of agricultural workers coming from Texas and other places. And I know that there's like pig farms and turkey farms and things like that in a lot of these towns where these things are happening. So I'm just curious to hear more about on the ground efforts, like how, how is engagement, being done? Because I'm curious to, because, I think it's something that we experience here, but I'm just really interested in hearing from folks who are working with the groups on the ground and how they make connections to the communities around there, and then also like the industries that make these impacts to the different watersheds. So to overcome this like decision that people are put in to have to say like, well, do you want the jobs or do you want, clean air, clean water?
Yeah, I'll just kind of to respond to that, Olga, I think, yeah, that's a very good point. And Mila had this on one of her slides about combined animal feeding operations are certainly can be a big source of nutrients. They aren't supposed to be discharging to waterways, but sometimes they do. So definitely that's a list of, engaging people who work there is going to be definitely an important part of this work as we move forward and start this work in more rural parts of Illinois. I would say, you know, what I've seen is we're just getting going on this in other parts of the state. Probably the Rock River group that Steve was talking about is one of the farthest along. But that's why we really welcome everybody's suggestions of who all we should be trying to engage in this work, and you know, ask you to help us engage more broadly with everyone that lives in these watersheds. I might say something, just a little bit, about what's going on in Chicago area waterways, that the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District has a requirement to develop essentially a NARP. It predated the NARP, so they're calling it a PARP, a Phosphorus Assessment and Reduction Plan. They are in the process of just doing kind of the background science assessment at the watershed scale right now, but we have definitely talked to them about giving them long lists of groups and community groups throughout the area that they need to be engaging as they move further on in the development of that watershed plan that includes the Calumet River.
Can I just ask a follow-up? So, I guess where the tension is like, what we hear here in the Calumet River, and this is not an area where I think is having the kind of, I'm trying to use my experience here and to see how it could work in other places and overcome some of the challenges. And the companies, and they would say like, well, if we make these, you know, these changes to our operations, it's going to put us out of business. And then they threaten like that they're struggling, that they can't make these changes. So I'm wondering like how those conversations, are those the same kind of reasons and things that we're hearing in these rural parts of the state from, you know, farmers and the kind of agricultural work that has, you know, these like stormwater issues that they can't contain their you know, they have these accidents, you know, when there's like, you know, storm events and things like that. Am I like making this up, or is that like something that that is also happening in other parts? I'm just trying to see if there's like a connection with that, because I think that it'll be helpful in the way that strategies are set up to make sure that like some of these companies are not going to move. You know, they you know, cry wolf, but in reality, there's too much money to be made, and they're not going to close if they have to have a facility that is sound and is not going to cause these dangerous situations for different watersheds. So I'm just wondering if that's like a roadblock or an issue that is coming up in the work that y'all are doing.
So, hey, Olga, good to see your face. Hi. Always wonderful to see friends. I feel like, you know, when I was introduced to NARPs and the conversation with wastewater treatment facilities, it was brand new, but there are other stakeholders that could be moved into that position in other industries. But we also know, like, working with farmers is probably my closest connection to nutrients than working with wastewater treatment facilities. But we do know that those stakeholders, how do I say this? I feel like it would be wrong to assume that they don't want to. But there are some true barriers to why it is that certain practices cannot be implemented sooner than later. And I think it is necessary for us as those on the side that are kind of activating and inspiring change to be completely available to understand what are the barriers to the decisions that need to be made. Some of them are financial, some of them are leadership, right? Like we've seen that with the transition of leadership and new ideas, that's when people start to be pro-environment. So I think it's necessary to listen as well as to work with. So my recommendation for working with stakeholders that are polar opposite of where it is that you are environmentally is to first be present and just listen. I found that I build a stronger alliance when I come in with a strategy that begins with what are the issues that they're currently facing in their industry, and how is my ask of them either moving them away from their mission or helping them accomplish it. So I look for opportunities where I can fit that helps solve a problem. I struggle with building relationships to just going in with the ask. And we know this as communities of color. I just kind of turned it around. Like how I like to be worked with is how I want to work with those who I don't agree with. And it's a powerful strategy, just listening. And what you'll find is that often the hiccups don't come with the ask. It is like the vocabulary and the rhetoric that we use means something totally different in this network than how we use it. So we create conflict that doesn't necessarily exist, but only exists because of how we use our words. So it's really important that if you're genuine about this work, there are some people that, that are very rah-rah and they're 4th of July, right? And they want to see action now. And then there are others that are a little more gentle and they work from the inside and they build these relationships based off of understanding, and they look for opportunities to then strengthen that insider to say, hey, did you ever think about water, or how are you all thinking about water? What are your pain points? What are some opportunities? Because at the end of the day, these are also our neighbors. And you're right. We often are put with the economy versus the environment as if they both don't work in concert together. So it's my hopes that with NARPs, it gives us an opportunity, like there's a tool that we can use to work collaboratively, but it requires us to build the relationships to be able to sit at the table, to have the conversation, to produce those plans that are meaningful and impactful and fair. So there are options for, I always think about the copper, the silver, and the platinum package. I believe that you can purchase the platinum package, but the stakeholder in front of you is like, no, we're kind of the copper. And the copper might be longer, less investment on the front end, and it might not look like it's enough for you, but it might be the capacity that they have based on their board, based on their finances, based on the energy that they have, the human resources that they have. These are issues that I think we deal with no matter what the stakeholder or who the stakeholder is or what part of industry is, but it seems as though wastewater treatment facilities and wastewater plants have taken the lead, and we can learn from these networks on how to better support the farmers and farming network to do their work that's necessary to reduce nitrates in waterways.
This is Cindy. I'd just add to that, I think that we've seen that and as I said earlier, that we've really seen that partnership develop at the statewide level when we work together on the state's nutrient loss reduction strategy, that everyone recognizes this is a big problem. It's not going to be solved overnight. It's going to take time, but that we're willing to work together and, as Mila said, listen to one another. And I would say, the agricultural community is very motivated to demonstrate. They're not like wastewater plants that get a condition in their permit. They want to demonstrate that they can resolve this problem through voluntary efforts. Do folks have any other questions for us?
Yeah, hi Cindy, it's me, Nicole. For the volunteer, I guess, citizen science portion of it, I guess, I don't know. It would seem to me that, I guess, scientists at IEPA, for example, would want people who have backgrounds in, you know, wastewater collection, whatever, what have you, water sampling, whatever, to do that kind of work instead of having Joe Blow citizen do it. I mean, it seems like what's all involved in that water sampling? Do they just collect the water samples and then just give it to the IPA, or are they citizens supposed to take it and have it sampled somewhere else at a facility? How does that work? Are there strict rules and regulations with sampling, making sure that, I don't know, bottles are, there are particular bottles that they have to use? What are the rules?
Yes to all of the above.
Okay.
I mean, wastewater facilities, for example, are required to test their effluent, and they have to test them in following methods that are approved by IEPA. Citizen scientists can do things in various ways, but the more a citizen scientist collects and tests water as close to the requirements that IEPA is putting on wastewater plants, the more likely the IEPA counts that data as more significant. You can get very simple kits that you can go out, and grade school kids can test nitrogen and phosphorus in our waterways, but they're not very precise or sophisticated kits, but they're useful for teaching children about nutrient pollution. But IEPA is not going to treat that data equivalent to what a wastewater facility collects. But citizen groups can put together plans and collect data in a way that Illinois EPA will treat that data as like their own data, or like data that a wastewater facility collects if you tell them ahead of time, we're following your methods.
Okay, so
I'd say everything is useful in terms of informing us and educating people on issues like nutrient pollution, but you can collect data in a way that IEPA will consider more meaningful because it follows their protocols.
Okay, so if let's just say me and a couple of other concerned citizens want to get involved in collecting water samples, so would IEPA provide the kits, or will we have to go out and get the kits? Where will we get the kits?
You would have to either get some kits, or you would have to work with a certified lab and get bottles from them and collect the samples and take it to them to be analyzed.
Okay, here's my follow-up question. Will we be reimbursed for using our money to buy the kits, or?
Are you asking? Well, it depends on you, not by Illinois EPA. You
Okay.
would have to have your group, or your watershed group would have to figure out how you're going to pay for it.
Okay.
So this is a really great question, Nicole. And I think about earlier in the chat, there were some comments. Well, Cindy had lifted up universities. So there are a few projects or departments that are doing things. For example, there's the UIC Freshwater Lab and Professor Rachel Haberlock that has an actual class that works on water issues, and they do capstones. So there are opportunities to work with universities that have students that need to do the things anyway. I mean, we do talk a lot about what is an academic ally, and how do you bring universities into the conversation, not just to use the reality of what we're experiencing politically and environmentally to educate people, but really produce something that results in something tangible that we can make decisions and advances the actual work across the landscape. So I would encourage those on the call to identify in their local area the universities that are working on water issues and how they're coming from it, because there might be a policy angle in one department, in the history poli-sci department, and then there is a more like analytical technical class in the in the ecology department or in earth and environmental sciences. And honestly, they might not even know each other. They might not even work together. It's very interesting how we could have this same conversation on building a diverse network just within a university so people could work together. You do have institutes that are a part of universities. I'll keep referencing UIC because I am ABD. We have the Institute of Environmental Science and Policy. Then University of Chicago has started their water program. Loyola also has some activities. So there are people doing things. And the question is, how do we turn our attention to the assets? So that mapping tool, while it has NARPs, you can actually begin to create layers that help you understand what your NARP network could look like. So you could map those that require NARPs, those that don't require NARPs, the community groups that are activated, and then you can make a layer of where are the programs and universities that are doing something water related, and then see, all right, well, there are 4 universities within this landscape. Who's doing what? How do we capitalize off of that? How do we use one university to do the testing, and how do we use the other university to hold the conversations? It's a bit of, it requires us to look differently at how to access resources because funding is scarce. And the one thing I want to bring us back to why it is that this session is associated with Vital Lands is that that is what Vital Lands is about. When I was introduced to Vital Lands, I did not know that Chicago was not Illinois. It's this, I work in the city, but I never related the issues of Chicago to downstate or central Illinois. It was Chicago over everything. And through Vital Lands, I started to understand how to see the state in myself and my work relative to what is going on. So it's important for us to identify the landscape of who's engaged, what assets they have, and how do we work collaboratively so we're not wasting money, misprioritizing and missing opportunities to advance the work in the landscape.
Great, thank you.
For Vital Lands.
Good answer.
Okay, and Emily placed in the chat, could you put it in the, you just sent it to me, Emily. It is a 2012, there we go. Covering NARP requirements on what's required through testing, because it does get very technical. And Cindy and I had talked about the learning curve that's required for volunteers and community groups to engage in water quality issues is very different than food systems, right? The learning curve is not as steep. So here at the Clean Water Team, we are charged with helping to not only bring people together, but identify where are the educational gaps so that people can find those that are necessary for the network so they can make strong recommendations. There's nothing wrong with realizing that a conversation goes over your head just because it's extremely technical, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn it. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to work on NARPs, is to translate and help people digest and wrap their minds around some of these more complex conversations of nutrients and nutrient loading and numbers and sampling, because people don't talk about this every day, and it's intimidating. So an empowered network is an informed and educated network, and there is a way of educating people without making them feel small and the problem so big that they'll never learn fast enough to be impactful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's what our Working in Local Watersheds team that Emily talked about, who meets at least monthly, we're just sharing one part, what one group in one part of the state is doing, sharing with another. It's very open and just opportunity to hear what's going on, what's going on in the Squaw Creek watershed in Lake County versus what's going on down in Southern Illinois. And I think, people really do like to dive into some of these technical issues, but we make it, we make it accessible to everyone. So we definitely, welcome you to join in those calls if you'd like to.
I would like to say before we wrap up, this talk is going to be accessible on multiple platforms. It will be published on YouTube. I'm not quite sure the accessibility of YouTube. There are captions for those that need to be able to read, and YouTube also allows for you to translate so that anybody in languages that are available to be translated on YouTube can also access the information as well. So hopefully that is something that will be accessible. So thank you for coming to our talk. And I'm going to go ahead and just put that last slide back up with our contact information. And I'll let Cindy and Emily say their goodbyes.
Yeah, I also want to say that if you scroll all the way to the top of the chat, I put in all of our contact information there as well. So it's another place you can find it. But thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for attending. And we really hope to see you soon at our Watersheds call. We'll send out the invite.
Great work, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. And see that Todd's put a evaluation form in the chat. So if folks could give us some feedback, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care.